landscapes. Truven Health Analytics is the largest leading source for intelligent information for business and professionals, unparalleled expertise across the spectrum of healthcare, and informs healthcare decisions of over 150 million lives through their decision support system. And they have a wide variety of robust solutions, including decision support systems and award-winning personalized communications. And their partner here, Phase 1, is analytical-based strategic communications and consulting firm with over a 30-year history of working with Fortune 100 and 500 companies and helping them make more impactful decisions. And they provide their clients with a competitive edge utilizing proprietary solutions to cover actionable insights that achieve desired results with specific target audiences. We hope you enjoy this webinar series and find it informative. And Matt, it's all yours.
Thank you, Doug. So to kick things off this afternoon, and before I even do that, I just want to thank the audience for being very, very patient and writing out the technology issues that we had. So, but to really kick things off, I want to do something a little more interactive and do a quick poll. So, John, if you could be so kind as to post that out there.
Yes. The first poll question is, do you currently use any personalization when communicating with your employees or members about their health or wellness? Please answer yes or no. And we'll give you a couple of minutes or a few moments to make that answer, and show you the results in just a moment.
Thanks, John. And so while we're waiting for folks to post an answer there, just to talk about this concept of one-size-fits-all communication, or the shotgun approach, and really one of the things that we're trying to combat out there in the marketplace is making sure that each one of these items, too much noise, too much complexity, the accessibility and relevance, making sure that all of those pieces go away, and we can actually have personalized messages that speak directly to the person who's receiving them, and not receiving messages that frankly are not relevant to them whatsoever.
So we're about finished with the poll. This is your note to go ahead and make your selection, and we'll close the poll in just a moment. Okay, and here are the results. Do you currently use any personalization when communicating with your employees or members about their health and wellness? 65% said yes, and 35% said no.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks, John. And those are actually great numbers. It's very positive. I think as we talk about this with our customers and prospects, and hearing this over the years, I think that number is gradually increasing as far as those personalized communications that are offered. And one of the things driving this certainly is the people that are receiving these communications, and ensuring that they're going to take action when they receive a communication. And so this Harris Interactive study really speaks to this in the sense that in asking a group of people if they would likely take action on a message that they received, those that received a personalized message were 96% likely to take action on that, whereas 10% would be apt to take action on something that was really more of that one-size-fits-all, that shotgun approach. Reminded of a message that I received in the mail a couple of years ago from a health plan that was trying to help me understand what preventive screenings I should be looking at. But instead of saying, "Hey Matt, as a 30-something-year-old male, you should be considering the following," it was, "If you're a 21-year-old female, consider the following if you're a 21-year-old male," and it went on and on and on, and it was literally the size of a placemat. And I only made it as far as like the 22-year-old female before I just flat out gave up, because it was just too much, and it was, most of it was not relevant to me. So, and this study certainly speaks to that element. So some of the best practices that we've really sought out over the years is to look at a population and with the end goal of essentially bringing one person in that population forward and speaking directly to that person, and then of course taking that concept and applying it to an entire population. So how can we do that? And in this case, we'll be looking at an example here, a use case, name of Julie Spencer. And what do we know about Julie? Well, in the absence of having data to help us personalize, we don't know anything about Julie other than the fact that this is her, maybe his first name, because we just don't have it in the data other than the fact that we've got a first name. So what we can do through claims data, eligibility data, is really learn a little bit more, and you'll see Julie will come more and more into focus as we mine her data. So eligibility, we know that she's a 44-year-old female, married with children, African American. We know where she lives, and then so further, we now bring in medical and drug claims. So we now know that she has diabetes. She does not have an A1C exam in the claims data. We know what medications she's on, and then further, we know what plan she's in. The fact that she's overinsured, so we're learning a lot more about her, and through some additional metrics, we're actually able to understand her attitudes toward healthcare. And I'll get into this in a little bit. We're combining some additional data we have and combining that with the demographics of a population, and we're able to really glean a lot more about this person's attitude about going to the doctor. Is she afraid of the doctor? Is she does she prioritize others over herself? And in this case, Julie's example, she feels responsibility as that caretaker. She's cost-conscious, and she sees the benefits of preventive care. So it's all those elements that we can actually take and meld that right into that message so that the message can speak directly to her. From the fact that we're only going to target her perhaps about an A1C exam as opposed to a reminder about a preventive screening that maybe she's already taken care of. So just having all of this data at our fingertips is extremely vital. And then the final piece to this is, what is the best way to engage her? Does she prefer print, electronic, and so forth? And in this case, she's signed up for text messages, so we know we can send those to her and probably keep things out of her mailbox. So from a personalization standpoint, as what we're seeing out there with this and applying these best practices, increasing the consumer engagement. People are going to be more responsive to these messages as they speak directly to them. They're reducing healthcare expenses, so people are being more engaged in their healthcare, and in turn eliminates trips to the ER, trips to the hospital room, overnight stays, and so forth. And it also reduces communication costs. And the example I gave earlier about how I received this placemat size reminder, I'm actually receiving something that's only relevant to me. So I'm not getting a one-size-fits-all communication. It's only those items that apply to me or to Julie in this example. So a couple things that we've done is we've set up a self-service way for people to go out and actually obtain this information in a website that is essentially a way for people to get a 360 view of their healthcare consumption. They can get a financial perspective of where things stand, how much they've paid on an annual basis, how much they've paid year to date, but as well as that, showing people what their gaps in care are if they have chronic conditions, preventive screenings they may or may not be overdue for. We want to make sure people get acknowledged for actually going and having their conditions maintained, as well as their preventive screenings taken care of. And then any cost savings alerts, we can find opportunities to message someone on. They go to an ER for a sore throat. Well, let's message them and say you could save money by actually going to your PCP or perhaps an urgent care center. So this is really that self-service way of communicating this to the user. But then another way that we've done this is also an outreach, a method of outreach in a personalized messaging solution, which allows users to receive these messages. And this is where we can get into that fully tailored aspect of a messaging solution where we're speaking directly to that person. We're putting imagery on the site that speaks to that person. We're breaking them down into a series of 96 different segments, and I'll show how that works in just a second, and actually providing them not only tailored content, but also educational content, so someone can understand not only, yes, I get that I'm overdue for an HbA1c, but what does that really mean? Why get the HbA1cs regularly? What do they do for me? And then the other piece there is, of course, helping them understand what that next step is. What's that clear call to action? So the components here, as far as getting these messages put together, of course, is the data aspect of things, and we talked about a lot of these pieces of data, but then targeting them, running through their claims data to figure out what they may deserve a message for. And that's that cost savings piece to the communication is let's make sure that we're only targeting the people that need to be messaged, and we stay away from the people that may be healthy and maintaining their health. And then tailoring, putting that message together through segmentation, through bringing in attitudinal insights, knowing that someone may be cost conscious or prioritizing their loved ones over themselves. Branding that, putting in variable text so that we're only providing the right educational content for that message, and then getting it out the way that someone prefers to be messaged. So we can send it print, through SMS text, through email, and then they retrieve their message, and then the end game there is that they read the call to action and they go to the doctor and they take care of themselves. So putting these messages together, it's done first and foremost through the demographic information that we talked about a little bit earlier. So learning more about, in this case we'll talk about Bruce Clemens. He's a 54-year-old male. He's got one child. He too is overdue for an HbA1c. And you see that here with some examples of what we've put his claims data through to figure out what he should be triggered. So these are just examples, but some preventive messages that we've said, okay, well, obviously Bruce is not going to be getting a mammography, so he'd be weeded off of that reminder. And then is he the right age to get a colonoscopy? Has he received one? But in this case, you see circled that we've got the diabetes diagnosis, but no A1C test. So that'll be something that he would have a message triggered for. So now we'll figure out what segment he belongs in. In this case, he's male, 54 years old, African American. He is married, and there is a presence of children in his household. So now we put together the words, and this is where we get into the attitudinal insights. And what we've done is we've referenced something within our bag of tricks, so to speak. We have a healthcare survey that we've been running for about 30 years now, which is called the Pulse Survey. And what the Pulse Survey does is it surveys 100,000 households on an annual basis, and it asks people what their impressions are of healthcare. We've got a whole slew of questions that we'll ask these households just to get a perspective of are people not likely to go to the doctor? Are they scared of going to the doctor? Are they concerned about cost? Do they preference their family members over themselves from a getting people to the doctor and their household perspective? Then we marry the information we've learned from that survey up to these segments that I've been talking about, and we combine that with what we're messaging the user on, and we'll know based off of what segment they are is how we should be addressing them. So in the case of Bruce, because of the segment he falls in, segment number 64, we're going to be a little bit more respectful and formal with him. You're a busy person, so we'll make this quick. That focus on others. We know through that survey that someone who falls into this segment is going to focus on their loved ones before themselves. So you do so much for your loved ones, and now's the time to do something for yourself. And then any other health topics we may want to address in this message. So a distrust of doctor, that cost, prioritizing others over themselves, and then address that specifically to this person. We'll bring in some imagery from an image library, and then we'll put that message together. And in this case, we've got an assembled message for Bruce, where in the upper left-hand corner, we've got a message that he can, or a picture he can identify with. And just to the right of that, we'll have a grabber message where we're saying, Bruce, people look to you as a role model, so take care of your health the way that you want loved ones to take care of yours, so of theirs. So now we're really speaking to Bruce and pulling him in, pulling his heartstrings, so he'll read the rest of that message. So in these statements here is where we're merging that information we've gleaned from that Pulse survey I was referring to. So as far as we see this, there is that combination. The best practice there is that combination of bringing in the personalization, but then also bringing it in with personalized healthcare supporting information so that we know the best way to speak to Bruce. Below that, you've got the health education content. What is an A1C test? What can that test do for you? And then lastly, that call to action. What's that next step? Bruce, call your doctor, and here's a phone number for your doctor. So there is this aspect, too, of a continual performance improvement with this, because since we need claims data to derive the system, well, you can use that claims data to also look at the efficacy of these messages. So in the case of Bruce's message, that message would go out. We would look to how we've tailored that message, and then how if he took action on that message, and then look at similar situations where we're sending messages out, to make sure that that action is being taken. If not, maybe there's something we need to tailor in that message. So as you can see, it's a very iterative process, and we're continually improving that as we see we need to. So just as far as seeing this how this works in the wild, we have put a pilot together for one customer initially where they had a 25,000 member population, and what they really wanted to do was utilize this for a few preventive services to see the efficacy of it. And in this case, they went after colorectal screenings, flu vaccinations, and cholesterol screenings. So what you see here is that they saw a 26% increase in those colorectal screenings, 60% in flu vaccines, and then 22% in cholesterol screenings. So that netted to a 14% improvement in preventive care for the entire population. And I think that one of the more powerful numbers here is really the fact that they saw essentially 0.25% of their population opt out of this. So they were able to outreach to almost 100% of their population for these reminders. A nice ancillary benefit is they use some of the real estate on the message to actually remind people about an HRA that they could use, and they did see an uptick of about 7% from the previous year. So that was a definitely added bonus. From a financial perspective, you see the ROI here. They saw a 3.3 to 1 ROI. Certainly a lot of that came from the colorectal screenings. There were several stories of people who had not been in for a colonoscopy. They went in. There were polyps that were found in these folks, and they were obviously very early stage of the cancer, and they were able to fix that before it became a later stage of cancer. So, of course, as you factor that out into the future, there's a huge cost savings to avoiding those cancers as later stage cancers. So the last thing to comment on here from a messaging perspective, I've spoken to this from a preventive and a gaps in care and a cost savings perspective, but the fact is the segmentation piece, the way that we're approaching this really can be applied to anything from a healthcare perspective. During time of enrollment, health education libraries, transparency solutions, disease management and wellness programs, any consumer tools. So we can really tailor those messages so that they speak directly to that person by utilizing a lot of those methodologies that I was referring to. And certainly that can be taken to anything from a healthcare perspective. So we do see that as a best practice of how to approach this and have messages personalized for populations. So at this point, I want to hand things over to the good folks at Phase 1, and what they're going to be talking about here is really how, now that a message is set up, is personalized, how can we look at that downstream impact, that effectiveness of those messages as they go out. So without further ado, I'll pass things over to you, Shannon.
Great, thank you, Matt. Hello, everybody. So Matt highlighted the importance of creating personalized messages to your employees and members. Now we are going to talk a little bit about how you can optimize those communications to ensure that you are achieving the job that you set out to do with your employees, members, or others in healthcare to whom you are messaging. Terry and I are thrilled to be able to introduce to you today what is likely a new way for most of you to approach communications. We will be sharing with you a way to evaluate and optimize your communications utilizing advanced analytics. We know analytics have been emerging as the way to make sense of data, so much so that the world of big data has declared this the decade of the analyst. In view of today's far more complex and data-rich environment, analytics are a welcome addition to the valuable uses of qualitative and quantitative research. So today we are going to share with you why and how advanced analytics reach deep into the world of communications. So what do we mean by communications? Communications include any touch point with your employees or members, like those that Matt discussed, such as print, web, and emails. There are a number of key criteria that should be considered when approaching the analysis of your communications. If you're currently using methods to evaluate and optimize your communications, ask yourself as we go through the key criteria if your current method meets these criteria. If you're not currently using measures to evaluate and optimize, these are questions that we do recommend you ask in the future. So the first key criteria is reliability. Is the current method that you are using to evaluate your communications reliable? Can you trust the method to produce accurate results upon which you can base decisions? Secondly, objectivity and unbiased insights. Does your current method produce objective insights, or are they potentially biased by subjectivity? Then we have timeliness. We all know that time is of the essence. Are you able to get the analytic results of your communications in a timely manner? Cost effectiveness. With ever-tightening budgets, is your current method cost effective? Confidentiality. Oftentimes, communications can be of a sensitive nature, especially if you are messaging to your employees and members, and you risk revealing your communication strategy. Sometimes there's also a need to hold your communications close until release and away from your competition. Does your current method provide this level of confidentiality? And lastly, ideally, communication analyses should have the ability to be utilized early in the process, from the rough concept idea stage, such as a drawing, all the way through to finished products. But does your current method provide this level of flexibility? Before we delve deeper into how advanced analytics can contribute to the evaluation and optimization of your communications, we want to discuss two traditional methods with which you are likely most familiar. The first is Post-Hoc, and the second, which we will be discussing in a few minutes, is pre-testing. With the Post-Hoc method, communication teams release the communication. Then they measure attitude shifts or behavior changes. And this usually involves a survey of your target, gathered by such means as an online survey or a phone survey. Then comes time for the decision point. You can decide to stay the course, assuming your messages and communications are helping you achieve your goals. You can make adjustments and then re-release to your target audience. Or you can stop the communications altogether if they are failing and you are not seeing the shifts in attitudes or the behavior changes that you are hoping to achieve. The other traditional measure that we want to discuss is pre-testing. And pre-testing is utilized to gather insights on communications. With this method, marketing, research, communication teams expose the communications to a subset of your target audience, such as employees or your members, utilizing traditional research methods, such as surveys and focus groups, before the communications are released. Then, the target audience provides feedback, and necessary revisions are made. Depending on the results, this may involve multiple iterations and ultimately could lead to possible re-exposure and a beginning of the cycle again. So now we have an interactive poll question, and I'm going to be silent for a minute while you answer the question.
So the question is, which method do you currently use to evaluate and optimize your communications? Please select one of the following: Post-Hoc, pre-testing, method other than Post-Hoc or pre-testing, both, or don't currently use any method. and we will give you the results in just a moment. Please vote now. Have about 10 more seconds. Okay, if you would go ahead and vote, and I will be closing the poll in just a moment. Still got a couple coming in. Okay, we're going to close the poll now, and here are the results. For the Post-Hoc, 24%, pre-testing 4%, method other 7%, both 19%, and a huge percentage, 47%, don't currently use any method. Back to you, Sharon.
Okay, great. Thank you, John, and thank you, everybody, for voting. So we are now going to discuss the key criteria for each of these different methods. For those of you that are currently using Post-Hoc or pre-testing or both, you're probably familiar with some of these pros and cons. For those of you who are not currently using one of these traditional methods, we are now going to discuss how these two approaches stack up against the key criteria we had outlined a few minutes ago. We are going to be utilizing this 5-point scale where green indicates strong, yellow has potential, and red indicates weak. And then you will also see the green, yellow, yellow-red gradations as well. So the Post-Hoc approach can be reliable and effective. It can also provide objective insights around your messages. However, this approach is not timely because the communication has already been released and your employees and members have been exposed to it. There could also be a considerable cost depending on the success of the communications upon release, and if the adjustments need to be made to help you meet your goals. Because the communications are released after development, confidentiality is not a concern. However, this approach does not allow for flexibility, and it is not easily applied to any stage of development from rough concept to less fully produced work. As you know, the communications must be completely finished before being released to your target audiences. So just to take a step back and sum up this approach, knowing that a majority of you are actually, a majority of you who are using an approach are using post-hoc analysis as part of your process when you're messaging to your employees or members. We want to draw special attention to the timeliness of the results. What if your communications don't work? What do you do? Now we're going to discuss pre-testing and how those stack up against the key criteria. So again, pre-testing was a traditional research method such as the focus groups and surveys, and 4% of you responded that you are currently using that method, and then that's likely higher because both post and pre were 19%. And the pre-testing option can absolutely elicit useful responses. However, oftentimes you might find you need more nuance and richer insights that can be gotten by talking specifically to your employees or members. So traditional research methods are proven to be reliable. Well-written surveys, such as online, phone, or in person, are definitely an objective way to get insights. However, focus groups are not, as they introduce subjectivity and biases on behalf of the participants. And depending on the number of communications, pre-testing can provide timely results, especially if online surveys are used. However, as you know, if you have multiple targets warranting multiple locations for testing, focus groups can be very costly. Exposing your communications to target audiences before they're released does put confidentiality at risk. And if you are exposing those communications to your current employee base, there's likely not to be any confidentiality at all, as we know that employees like to talk to one another. Additionally, communications have to be in a somewhat finished form before they are exposed to your target audience to get accurate results, ultimately limiting flexibility.
We'd like to transition now and talk a little bit more about this advanced analytics. I think it would be really interesting to talk to that 7% who use another method. Advanced analytics might be already in your toolkit. But when we talk about advanced analytics and their application to the evaluation and optimization of communications, what exactly do we mean? Specifically, advanced analytics involves adherence to a very strict analytic evidence-based methodology. It must be grounded in a rigorous objective process, and it can be completed without direct exposure to your target audience. Like any sound analytic process, analytics applied to communications must be something that can be reliably replicated and is trainable. Analytic processes applied to communications must also take into account all of the nuances of the communication, allowing for a strict, thorough codification of the communication through deconstruction, coding for all of the content, style, and structure, leaving no stone unturned. Each of these nuances must then be studied to fully understand how they work together. Through a process of reconstruction, the nuances are studied via a series of frameworks, revealing key insights into areas such as messaging or theme focus, branding, ability to grab attention, clarity, and ultimately drilling down to understand strategic alignment. It is by following a rigorous methodological approach that reliable conclusions can be drawn in areas impacting success, such as linkage of a message to a core idea, persuasiveness, or to say that another way, ability to influence behavior change, as well as uncovering obstacles that might stand in the way of overall performance. While the traditional methods of post-hoc and pre-testing can provide a useful information in today's very complex and data-rich environment, analytics are a welcome addition to these methods. Oftentimes, situations require more nuanced and richer insights than can be gathered by talking with our audiences. And that's where advanced analytics come into play. These analytics provide another tool in your toolbox to gain actionable insights. And analytics can have considerable advantages over directly asking our audiences what they think about a campaign or even the appropriateness of a channel. These benefits include a methodologically sound analytical process provides the ability to really look in the headlights, looking future forward, and reliably forecast how communications and strategies will perform, allowing you to make adjustments and refinements before costly production or release of any kind. Analytics also provide the ability to look in the rearview mirror, allowing you to diagnose why communications and strategies performed the way they did. And analytics can do so with an N of 0. In other words, without the need to speak directly to the end user while being highly accurate in forecasting audience's response. Let's go back and examine how analytics stack up against the key criteria outlined earlier. Analytics are reliable, evidence-based methodologies, have been validated by marketers at the 75 to 80% range, and on occasion as high as 87. This reliability is inherent in the methodology being based in the evidence and not just an opinion. Analytics are also guided by a rigorous analytic methodology and therefore provide objective, unbiased insights around your messages, and they are timely. Actionable insights can be gained in as little as 10 business days. They're highly cost-effective. There's no cost for recruiting. There's no need for incentives. There's no facilities that need to be found. And they're highly confidential. Using analytics, your communications are not exposed to the audience, allowing you to even test variations of your message without any risk. Additionally, they're highly flexible and can be easily applied at any stage of development, from very rough drawings or concepts to fully produced work. Advanced analytics are so flexible, in fact, they can even be harnessed in the developing of winning strategies or winning messages. When it comes to the variables that influence the success of a communication strategy, our analytics have uncovered 120 different situational variables that must be considered. But before we walk through some exemplar applications of advanced analytics in the healthcare industry, it's important to also understand what advanced analytics are not. They are not absent of target audience input. Advanced analytics may not expose your communication directly to your target audience, but that does not mean that the analytical process does not include audience insights. Our system draws on decades of research that includes hundreds of thousands of individuals. This allows for forecasting how your audience will respond to your message while providing actionable insights. Analytics are also not just the opinions of smart people with years of experience under the belt. There are a number of marketing consultants with decades of experience in the field. Such people are useful, but even the best of us are right at most 55 to 60% of the time, versus an evidence-based methodology with 75 to 80+% accuracy rate. As Wanamaker noted a century ago when he found that half the money he spent on messaging was wasted, the problem was he did not know which half. Analytics improves those odds considerably. We'd like to share two case studies demonstrating how the power of analytics translate into work you do in the healthcare field. The first application highlights how analytics were used to increase the performance of health insurance television communications that were targeted to small business owners. Here, the personalization of the message to a specific group was critical. This client was enthusiastic about its latest communication efforts to small business owners. However, Post-Hoc measurement showed it had only moderate impact. Dissatisfied with these results, the organization came to phase one, and their objective was to determine why the communication underperformed and to gain specific guidance on how to improve. In 10 days, through the application of a proprietary advanced analytic process, we were able to pinpoint the specific reasons the communications to small business owners performed so poorly. And were able to provide actionable guidance that allowed this organization to go back and make improvements, including further personalizing the message and helping in the identification of messages that would resonate with this very specific and unique target audience. It resulted in revised communications that had significant measurable improvements. Just to demonstrate the significant level of improvement, we can see from this comparison of the original performance in the Post-Hoc versus the revision that just the sheer number of responses to the communication increased significantly over the original version. And the responses per exposure to the audience also increased significantly, up to 14% versus the original. This resulted in a significant drop in the cost to this customer, but even more important to them is that the leads that they did receive were qualified leads, and that meaning that people who were actually qualified to respond were significantly higher, which led to a much higher conversion rate. This wasn't just the result of better communications, but communications speaking more directly to this very specific target audience. Now, while this was a television commercial, the same process can be applied to communications as uniquely personalized as those that Matt just demonstrated, asking for a very specific action from a very unique subset of an employee population. Increasing the clarity and relevance of a message to a target audience can lead to a significant behavior shift, and all of that through the power of analytics. The second application highlights the flexible and agile nature of analytics. Here again, the client was a major healthcare organization with 4 distinct target audiences. These audiences included employees, they had agents out in the field, they had large employers, as well as the general population. They wanted to understand if their current communications program was delivering on the brand's strategic pillars, and if so, to what degree. Their goal was to leverage this learning in the future and to ensure that these strategic ideas resonated across the 4 target audiences. Here, we completed an audit of all of their current communications, over 200 pieces in total, ranging from collateral, like brochures and pamphlets, to posters, online messaging, and letters. You can imagine how costly this would be if traditional methods had been utilized. This audit provided actionable insights, ultimately leading to more impactful, personalized communications. I'm going to give you a snapshot of the overview of the learning. And advanced analytics were able to identify how well the customer's current communications were delivering against their corporate goals from a collective Gestalt perspective, as well as against each of the key targets. A snapshot of all the detailed learning quickly shows where the company was doing well as where they were falling short of their goals. Let's just first look at the heat map. Again, green representing strong and red representing weak. We can see that strategic pillar number 1 was delivered well to target audience number 2 there, while pillar 3 was being delivered in a compelling way to target audience 1. But across the board, this customer was experiencing issues in being able to deliver on their strategic pillar number 2. This quickly tells the organization and those overseeing the program where they need to focus their time and energy. In addition, the diagnostics in each of the sales helps to eliminate further the core elements that either contribute to or stand in the way of success. Audits such as these also allow companies to share learning across the organization. This company, for instance, had a communications team dedicated to target 1 and a separate team for each of the other targets. Therefore, the communications team focused on audience 1 was able to not only learn about what it was doing well, but then to learn from the successes and failures of the other teams as they move forward with crafting new messages specifically for their unique target set. And it provided senior management with a benchmark against which future communication programs could be measured. These 2 examples illustrate the flexibility of advanced analytics. It can be applied to assist in the optimization of a single communication or across a body of communications to understand the collective impact against an organization's goals, and done so in a timely, cost-effective manner. But to be successful and accurate, advanced analytics can only add this level of value and insight if it adheres to a rigorous, evidence-based methodology.
Thank you, Terry. That is the conclusion of the presentation. We do have some questions that have come in during the presentation, and you're also welcome to visit both Truven and Phase 1's websites that are noted there below. The first question is, will there be an audio file of this presentation that can be emailed after the webinar? There will actually be an archived version of the full presentation, including both visual and audio, that will be made available to all the attendees shortly after the presentation concludes. The next question is, and either one of you can answer this, where does your data come from? The health carrier, employer, or member?
So this is Matt. I'll take this first, and then and Terry and Shannon, if you want to address that too. Yes, generally we'll get the claims data from the carriers, and then the eligibility information. Generally, we'll get that from the eligibility vendor. at times we'll have this information in-house because our the folks that are signing up for these solutions, like personalized messaging as an example, is currently one of our database or our Advantage Suite customers, so we already have the data in-house because we're currently doing data analytics for them. So it's very convenient for us to be able to just reach into their database and pull out the data we need for this. But that's not a requirement. We can certainly do this with data just coming directly from a carrier.
And for phase one, ours is a collaborative effort with the customer. We don't want to assume that all customer sets are the same. We do have a baseline understanding of the industry, but want to be sure that all of our insights are calibrated to the unique needs of the customer.
Thank you. The next question is this information only applicable if we have a self-funded plan, or is this available to employers who are fully insured?
So I'll take that. As long as we can get the claims data, I would say that a self-insured employer is going to be certainly it has more skin in the game, if you will, to wanting their employee base to take care of their health. But along those same lines, the fully insured, of course, still has that interest. They just don't have as much of that financial interest in the game. Certainly, as long as we're pulling in the claims data, we can pull that information, run the rules, so run through that data, look for opportunities to message people, and get those messages out.
The next question is, I think, more of a comment that they would like you to comment on. What would also be great is if you could put on your messaging where they could go in their particular area to get a particular test based on cost-quality measures, removing the lack of transparency in healthcare with targeted messaging based on where they live and the tests they should get. Would either of you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so I can certainly comment on that, and that's actually something we're doing today, in that we're marrying the personalized message piece to this to transparency. So we're effectively bringing people to a solution so that they can not only see that they are overdue for a specific test, but they can also in turn find out how much that would cost them based off of their benefit plan information, and find specific providers, as well as get quality information about those providers, and from there they can obviously in turn schedule that appointment with that provider, and so on. So yes, I think it's a great idea, and it's something we're currently doing, and we're always looking for creative ideas like that, and the ability to marry as much powerful information as possible, whether it is that solely from a healthcare perspective, but also bringing in that financial component, quality, and even specific providers with distance information and so on.
The next question is, Matt, how can you tell if a messaging campaign is working? What metrics do you use to determine ROI?
Yeah, so that goes back a little bit to that case study where I was representing, where having that claims data in-house really allows us that additional power of being able to retroactively look to see, okay, well, we sent a message on 1/1, the person went to the physician on 1/15 or 2/1, so there is a correlation between the person receiving that message and then going to the doctor, having that procedure done. And then, of course, in turn, looking at that ROI component is really extrapolating sort of if that procedure or that test would not have taken place, and depending on what was found when that procedure took place, similar to my colonoscopy example, what that could have cost in the long run had that person not had that taken care of.
The next question, I believe, is for phase one, and the question is, so are you proposing the advanced analytics that you discussed as a replacement for the traditional analysis, meaning post-hoc and pre-testing, or as a complement to traditional analysis?
Great question. It can be a replacement. However, most of our clients see value in pairing analytics, the advanced analytics, with a traditional method such as pre-testing because it allows them to get a good gauge on the communication or communications earlier in the process.
The next question, I believe, was there someone else? Did anybody else want to weigh in on that? Okay, Matt, I think this next one is for you. Are your solutions HIPAA compliant?
Yes, and we do expressly state that within the solution, and it probably didn't show up very well in the slide that I had up, but we have a fair amount of fine print legalese that is displayed to the user, whether it does come home via mail or they pick it up via online, where we're essentially stating that they're in the case of our employer customers, that their employer has contracted us as a third party. The employer has no knowledge of this information. It's being sent directly to us, and we are adhering to all of the HIPAA standards and protocols when producing these messages. So in a short way of answering that question is yes, they are.
Great. I think this one is for phase one. I think it says if you don't directly talk to the target audience, how will you be able to effectively understand the people that you're trying to reach? And I think that was part of your discussion, Terry.
Yeah, and exactly, and it sort of builds on the earlier response to it. It is a collaborative work. Phase one works very much in partnership with its customers. And so if it's from an employee base working with those who work directly with those employees, we have sort of a series of questions that we need to have answered. And if that information is not available, then we do have techniques in place that can help us gain that learning, and that learning then, of course, is shared with the organization, so it becomes part of the repository of understanding who their audiences are.
The next question is, are you finding that people are electing to go with print messages or electronic messages in their communications?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that's directed to me. Actually, it just depends on the population base. We've got customers that are electing to do a combination depending on what sort of demographic their population falls into, or at least the perceived accessibility to the internet or to mobile devices, and as well as perhaps what age range the population falls into. So we're actually seeing a pretty substantial mixture of how our customers are electing to do it. Some customers actually feel that going direct to print initially, just to essentially announce the program, is a good way to go to get the word out, get people, and then have them essentially stick with print or opt into electronic via email or text message.
Thank you, Matt. So we are about out of time now. Would either one of you like to wrap this up? I think the questions that have been asked have been answered, and if there's any additional ones that come in, we'll definitely, Matt or Shannon or Terry will get back with you directly.
I appreciate this opportunity, and I think Matt, I'll let you speak for yourself, but I believe what we've been able to demonstrate today is just that power of personalization that Matt demonstrated and the impact you can have by speaking directly to your audience. And then hopefully we'll be able to introduce you to a new method of being able to understand how you can optimize those communications even prior to the release, so we're not waiting to that post-hoc to see if a behavior change has happened, that we have that confidence prior to its release that we're going to get the impact that we want to have.
Yep, thanks, Terry, and to the folks that are still on, thank you very much for joining us today, and to both Terry and Shannon at Phase 1, thank you so much for participating in this, and we hope that everyone felt that this was beneficial, useful, educational, and enjoyable. So, and also to both John and Doug at IHC, thank you very much for hosting this.
Well, that's our pleasure, Matt. And just to remind everybody that this event will be archived and available. You will be notified as soon as it is up and available for download. And until then, feel free to let Matt or Terry or Shannon know if you have any questions by going to their website. I'll end this at this point, and thank you very much.